Great. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This is the Planning Committee meeting from Town Council. I'm Steve Tanner. I'm chairing this evening's meeting. We want to make our meetings available to as many people as possible, regardless of whether they're here or whether they're here in the council chamber or online via Zoom. And so we use a hybrid setup. For those in the room, the usual housekeeping. Emergency exit is to the rear corner of the room. The assembly point is in the car park. Toilets can be accessed at the end of the corridor on the right-hand side, or there is an accessible toilet to the right of the lift. Any panelists on Zoom, please use electronic raise hand by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of your screen. For those in the room, please raise your hand. Any attendees on Zoom, please post questions through the Q&A board. Attendees' names will become visible on the questions board for the record as your question is answered. For those attendees in the room, please raise your hand. Tonight, James will clerk and Becca will manage the questions board and the participant settings. The meeting will be recorded for minuting purposes, and we also live stream to our YouTube channel. It's good to see everybody here. Thank you very much for coming. Just one thing, for those who aren't aware, we are an advisory committee here. We feed our notes back to Somerset East Planning Committee, who are the formal decision makers. Okay, up to number 2 on the agenda. Agree the apologies of absence received. Yeah. Right. Sorry, go back a stage. Question number 1. Agenda item number 1. Questions, comments and information from the public and councillors, which, Sue, I think we've got something for you, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Use a mic, please.
Okay.
Yeah, we use a mic so that people online can hear us. That's it. Yeah. You can stand there or you can go on to the lectern.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you this evening about the flooding that happened on Birchall Lane back in January and February of this year, which was as a result of the Francis Field development by David Wilson Homes. If we could move on to the next slide when you're ready. It should just be clicked to... Okay, thank you. So we saw significant surface water runoff from the development impacting 3 properties and the allotments. The attenuation ponds were overflowing and water was discharged off to the side of the site, including on dry days. Clearance and development of the main site was allowed to begin before the attenuation ponds were completed and fully operational. Future developments in the area are on a steeper site and have attenuation ponds far closer to the existing properties, which will risk material damage if the same approach is allowed. Could we move on to the next slide? So on January the 26th, there was some heavy rainfall. And there's a map on the left, which shows, you can see the 2 attenuation ponds outlined in blue. So pond 1 was already dug, pond 2 was in construction. The purple lines show the way the water was flowing downhill. 3 properties were impacted: Selwood, just above Birchall Lane, and then My Way and Birchall Cottage, which are to the south of Birchall Lane. They were all impacted by flow coming from the southwest corner of the site, and the residents at Selwood were aware of pumping. On the other side of the site, in the top corner, you can see where the allotments are labelled. They were impacted by flow coming down from the east side of the site, shown by the dashed line. Attenuation Pond 1 was overflowing into Field C, flooding onto Birchall Lane and down into Field D. All of these routes end up with water going into the river Frome with additional sediment. The rainfall was typical for the time of year in January. In fact, we'd had a similar amount of rain the first week in January, and there had been no issues along Birchall Lane. Thank you. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So we've got 3 videos here. The first is a clip that's the water coming off Birchall Lane, off Field A onto Birchall Lane. If we just play that again, maybe. You can see there's a large amount of water coming down. It's then hitting a drain and going underneath, and that wall is actually the house wall of My Way. There's a lot of water. If we go on to the next one, that's in the narrow alley between My Way and Birchill Cottage. And we've got water flowing down, it's backing up through a drain. It then goes rushing on down through our garden. And the third video is the allotments. There's just water everywhere. It's flowing downhill, and parts of our garden looked quite like this as well. There's all the sediment running down and also the soil being stripped off. So there's a lot of water. If we move on to the next slide, this is now what Pond 1 is looking like. So Pond 1 isn't actually quite full. You can see it's maybe somewhere between 50 centimetres and a metre from the top. But the ground below it, in the middle picture, you can see it's saturated and it's flowing onto Birchill Lane. It goes onto Birchill Lane, it runs downhill a little bit till it finds an old culvert, which it overwhelms. And if you click the video on that image there, you can't actually hear the sound, but you can see that that flow is less than the flow on either side. So there's more water coming off the sides of the development than there is in the middle below the attenuation pond. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, the end of February, we've got some more heavy rain. It's the same map, but you can see I've marked on the flow paths again in purple, and you can see they're all now coming from the middle of the site. There's nothing coming off the sides this time. Pond 2 is now fully constructed, which is great, but it is overflowing, and that water goes into Field B, along the road, and down into the garden of Birchill Cottage. Attenuation Pond 1 is also overflowing, as it was before, into Field C and D. There's a bit less rain, but it's still a good 2 inches of rain, so not really that different from January. If we go on to the next slide, please. So you can see in the top left, Pond 1 is overflowing. Now it's absolutely full to the brim. The picture in the middle is looking down from below Birchill Lane in Field D, and you can see that that field is running with water all the way to the river. There's a lot of water flowing down there. That is above the area that was all dug up with the pipe that was put in. So all the water is still ending up in the river, just with more sediment. Pond 2 at the top is constructed now, and it's completely overflowing, going into Field B, which then the water runs on down onto Birchill Lane. Okay, the next slide, please. So that's March 4th. It's a dry, sunny day. I go out at 10 o'clock and the road is dry. I come back at 12:30 and it's wet. I follow the water uphill and I come to a pump, actively pumping to the side of the second attenuation pond, and that water is discharging off into the field B, and you can see, Field B is squelching with water. That water is flowing into the top of the garden at Selwood again, and also going down onto Birchill Lane. And the last picture on the right is what it looks like 300 metres away from the pump in the garden at Birchill Cottage. So it's flowing for more than 300 metres. There's quite a volume of water that's appeared. Okay, thank you. If you can move on, please. So just in summary, the flooding was caused by both the overflow of attenuation ponds and discharge that was allowed off to the sides of the site on multiple occasions, and has resulted in unrestricted flow into the Froome. At the time of the attenuation ponds flooding, they were still being constructed and connected, and the outflow, obviously, to the river was not operational. The planning documents do show that David Wilson Homes were asked to provide details of temporary discharge plans during construction. I think we've only been saved from further flooding because of the exceptionally dry spring that we've had. If we just move on one more to the next slide, please. So that's happened. My concern is what's going to happen going forwards. We've got 2 more developments in the area, both which are on steeper sites. There's the proposed development of Birchill Lane by David Wilson Homes, and also the next phase of Francis Fields across the B3092. They both have attenuation ponds closer to properties than the Francis Fields one. So in this image here, it's from the new proposed Birchall Lane development. You can see Birchall Cottage and My Way highlighted in yellow. And right across the road, which is about 4 metres wide, is an attenuation pond. So that attenuation pond is within 10 metres of a house wall. The site is steeper than at Francis Fields, and the floor level of those properties is below the pond. And if you think about it, in that 10 metres, you've got 4 metres of road, 1 metre of hedge, and then about 5 metres of field. And that, if that pond is allowed to fill, that will become fully saturated, and you've got a drop. It could all end up in the road, and then the houses. So overflow from this pond would risk material damage to Birchall Cottage and My Way. So if we just move on to the last slide, just some key takeaways. We can't have the mistakes that have happened at Francis Fields being repeated. That there is a material risk of damage to existing properties on these steeper sites if, during the development phase, the site gets cleared before attenuation ponds are fully connected. So we really need to think about the process here. Main site clearance and development shouldn't be allowed until the attenuation pond drainage system is fully functional and also accepted by Wessex Water. So the water has got somewhere to go other than just over land. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thanks for that. Okay. I know representatives from David Wilson Homes are here. I think it might make sense if we go through the other little bits of the agenda first, apologies and whatever, and then give you a chance to respond, if that's okay with you guys. Yeah? Okay, thank you. So if we could go to item number 2 of the agenda, agree the apologies for absence received.
We've had apologies from Andy Jones.
Great. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Philip.
That's unanimous.
It's unanimous. Item number 3, any declaration of members' interests?
I'm not going to declare an interest. I don't think it's strictly necessary, but I am a plot holder at Mule Jones allotment. So for transparency's sake, I just want to share that.
Thank you. Item number 4, to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of June 2025. No issues with that. If we can, with that. Thank you very much. And I will sign that. Great. Thank you very much. So item number 5, to consider the major plan applications received. As I said, we've got representatives from David Wilson Homes here who want to present on the proposed Birchall Lane development. So over to you. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have a presentation or something.
Taking one of those. Testing, testing. Oh, my glamorous assistant. Firstly, could I start by saying that the issues raised about the flooding from the earlier phases, it shouldn't have happened. I mean, that's a matter of record. The decisions were taken by a contractor to discharge water from unfinished ponds because the connections weren't in place to the Wessex network. It shouldn't have happened. I can only repeat that, and I can only assure you that since then there's been lots of work done with Wessex Water and by our contractors on site and by our engineers. I am assured from recent correspondence with the senior engineers at Wessex that the system is all connected up and running. And therefore, you know, those problems that are historic, and I can't repeat strongly enough, it should not have happened. But going forward, the system is now fully connected, and we certainly don't anticipate any other further problems. With regards to the construction phase of this development, if this one goes ahead, you're right. Again, it shouldn't have been constructed and started the commencement of the construction without properly requisitioning with Wessex and without those connections being put in place. So, yeah, the planning conditions are supposed to, you know, phase the development in such a way that allows for those attenuation ponds to be put in and to be operating. before they start to begin to collect water from the development or from the the cleared field. So again, I can only apologise for that happening.
Can I ask a question why that didn't happen then?
Very simply, it was a disconnect between the Wessex water requisition system. There's a load of legal paperwork that you have to do when you connect to Wessex's system. That inevitably takes a period of time. Unfortunately, our contractors on site constructed the ponds. They were beginning to overflow. They took the decision to simply vent those onto the roads, which they shouldn't have done. And because of that, rather than simply connect into the Wessex pipe and make the whole thing work, that led to the problems that happened. So it was a disconnect between our engineers, the timescales involved in Wessex completing their paperwork, and the actual works taking place on site.
Sorry, I know that you want to get going.
And that's fine.
I'm the councillor for this area, the unitary councillor, and I checked the conditions, and it seemed to suggest that the surface water treatment didn't have to be completely linked up until what's called first occupation. So it was not a pre-commencement or pre-construction condition. What the lady just, and what worries me is we can improve on this next one if it goes ahead, but what worries me is the one across the road. I don't know if you want to have this discussion now. Shall we wait till afterwards? I mean, it's just that what worries me about the one across the road has got the same conditions. They don't have to be connected up until first occupation. And that's the one that I want to focus on next and to tackle that lady's problems. But you may want to have this discussion afterwards.
Yeah, I think there's a much bigger picture, it would appear, wouldn't it, on the whole site and how the drainage is being managed in the construction phase.
Yes.
And maybe that's a discussion we need to have at another time, I think.
As far as I understand, the conditions for the other side of the continuation of Francis Fields are the same as the ones that have created the problems at the moment. So then
It doesn't have to be connected until first occupancy, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's something we need to look at, I think. Yeah.
And I think clearly one of the recommendations you might want to be making on here is that condition is changed.
Absolutely.
And clearly it should be. And if that's something that Somerset, well, the Mendip part of former Somerset, have imposed that, to my mind, that isn't the way to do it. And clearly the historic problems at the site need to be sorted out with a proper plan.
So let's pick that up.
Yeah, but we also
afterwards.
need a variation, which may have to come from you, to change the other one that has already got permission, to make sure that that also gets sorted out before preoccupation, if you see what I mean, before occupation.
Indeed. Okay, well, let's take that. Also.
Using the same contractors?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid. I'm not directly connected to the construction teams.
I can assure you, Typro are the main
Yeah.
groundwork contractors, and they use Davis to do the drainage to Wessex Water.
You're having fun, son.
I am. Minor technical glitch, but I'm just going to send the presentation to Jane. I'll read the reports.
It was all going so well.
Thank you.
There's sort of the issue about the new development and the sort of and potentially the other one, and then there's the sort of what happened here, and I don't know whether it's worth us just sort of focusing on that before moving on to the new development in a way, because I think there is a sort of, it feels that there's some unanswered questions about what happened, and I know that it's, what has happened previously, but from what Sue just sort of said, so what are your plans to make sure that it doesn't happen again?
Well, as I say, I mean, it strikes me there's something fundamentally wrong with the planning conditions that were applied, but equally well knowing the experience of the site, I am assured by our engineers, I've spoken to our site engineers, I've spoken to Wessex Water, I've detailed email from their senior engineer, saying that, they're working together, and that's the point, and that's what didn't happen previously. And there was, a disconnect between contractors on site, management on our side, and, the Wessex system. So all I can say, it was a mistake. It won't be repeated, I hope.
So since it's been connected, have there been any issues?
Not that we're aware of, and all the evidence that the lady was referring to obviously stems from earlier on the year, January, February, March time. Obviously, it's fair to say, of course, we haven't had a lot of heavy rainfall since then, but as I say, my understanding is that the site is The ponds are all connected up. They're connected into the Wessex system as they should be. And they should be expecting to function normally in times of rainfall going forward.
Okay, can you, is it on? Okay. I'm Elaine Pugsley. I'm actually a resident of Dragonfly Close, right next to Francis Field. Our house overlooks the Francis Field development, so we can see a lot of what's going on a daily basis. And my observations are, in the ideal world, an engineer will be working closely with the ground workers, with all the contractors, and they'll have a timeline. My observations are there's a lot of rushing going on all the time, and corners being cut, and mistakes being made and having to be redone. I mean, we see that on a daily basis. Things being installed and then having to be reinstalled. My concern is, how can we really trust that this developer, and it was our developer as well, so I have some sense of loyalty as well to DWH, but they're under such pressure to get houses built quickly and sold quickly, that corners are being cut, mistakes are being made, bound to be, and communication isn't always straightforward between an engineer who might not be on site at some point, and you've still got contractors who are on bonuses and all, and targets. I'm not sure that that the planning consent takes sufficient account of those processes going on in a construction site.
What I would say to that, Elaine, is if you see things that you think are wrong, either talk to us here or Helen over there as the ward councillor, and we can talk to enforcement and people like that. But if we don't know, we don't know.
No, I have spoken. I've emailed Helen. I know Helen personally as well, and I've emailed her as a councillor, and she's done whatever she could. I would be emailing, I'd be phoning nearly every day, to be honest. The things we see happening, I mean, an example, they've got a father and son working as contractors there. They had a raging argument right outside our fence, swearing at each other at the top of their voices. And I contacted them and said, I think you've got a bullying situation going on in your workforce.
I have followed up most of Elaine's complaints, and I do forward them to the planning officer, and sometimes you do write directly, don't you? And to Dave Brewster Holmes, and and also James Kidner. Yeah, he's been quite helpful, so there has been lots of liaising back and forth about all these things, and I've actually just recently sent an email to you, Sue, that I'm sorry I hadn't sent it before, to say about the connection. Some of the questions have not been answered. So, for example, Elaine picked up on the fact that Wessex Water's drain going down to the river seemed to be below the level of the river when it was normal. So that means that when the river floods, it means that it backs up from the drainage system. So there's some really basic engineering issues as well. And that drain that you've put in going down to the river, as I understand, it's also going to service the one on the other side of the road. So we're going to have a drain going under the road. It seems to me there's a lot of issues on this site. And the other thing to bear in mind is we've just had a full council meeting where, and I've put this in an email as well to somebody today, we've got a team of 8 enforcement officers across the whole county. One's responsible for dogs, is a dog warden, and one is town manager of some sort. I don't know if that's markets. So that means we've got 6 enforcement officers. So there is a problem when we're trying to get get things done. So it's just like, so people like Elaine are fantastic because it's the eyes and ears of the community, actually, to let us know what's going on, and then we can chase it. But it's not always possible to anyway, sorry, you want to get on, really.
I think Jane's got a question. Jane?
Sorry, yes.
I think, just from my perspective, I think the most important thing is the fact that you know someone from David Wilson, James Kidner, who's our senior engineer. I raised the issues directly with Ralph Hawkins, our managing director, and so he raised them at the last meeting when we had that. There is a line of communication there. If there are problems on site happening, the most important thing is you and local residents have got somebody to talk to. I do think, the problems are historic. I hope they will be, that we will be, better practice going forward. But I think, the most important thing from my perspective is that you have names, contact details, and that we are being responsive, albeit that the queries shouldn't happen.
Sorry, quick question just relating to that, really. As we've said, it's great that we've got Elaine and our eyes and ears on the site, but actually there should be a manager on site who's picking all this up. It shouldn't be down to Elaine and Helen. So I'm just wondering whether or not you might be able to suggest some kind of condition or something within a section 106 that would perhaps ensure that there was somebody there instead of Elaine having to...
I think the idea is that there should be somebody there, or there should be somebody managing the project from our side directly, and a prime lead contractor, lead project manager. All of those things should be identified on the site in terms of the hoardings around the site should tell you all of the contact details, who the contractors are, points of emergency contact. They should all be part of our standard construction practice.
It doesn't appear that that's necessarily been happening in this case, because it has been down to Elaine and Helen to pick up those issues. So just maybe something to tighten up on in the...
If I may, that's the point I was going to make. You are legally required to have a site manager, a named person.
Indeed, there is one.
And that person needs to be on site, and if that person is not on site, someone else is delegated. So I don't see a lot of this discussion at the moment where it's going, because we're talking about who's got responsibility and planning laws need to be changed, et cetera, et cetera. What is not happening on a lot of developments is that the site manager is not enforcing regulations and also not controlling contractors and subcontractors. Now, this issue of the water being pumped out of the attenuation pond, my way of thinking is, if that water hadn't been pumped out, it would have just got to its full position and it would have just trickled away. But actually forcing that amount of water, a decision taken by a contractor or subcontractor, was completely wrong. So therefore, the site manager is responsible. We, as residents or councillors and what have you, don't need to chase all these different people with different phone numbers. It's the site manager. They're responsible for health and safety and everything else. So really, that person should be here talking to these people and giving clear explanations.
Okay, can we wrap this bit up? Yeah.
Something that relates to what you just said. If that water had been left on If that water had been left on site and not pumped off, they probably couldn't have done any work on site that week. Instead, they were pumping it off and they were using their excavators to do the groundworks for the foundations and for the civil engineering for the site. So it's about actually the pressure they were all feeling to work to a target. And that's my biggest concern. What flexibility have they got, have contractors got, to go with the conditions rather than forcing the build in terrible conditions?
I think we need to move on, but I think we need to understand a bit more about what happened and make sure it doesn't happen going forward. So if we can move on to the proposals for the land at the Mount, over to...
microphone for the benefit of the webinar. I just want to point out there is a minor typo on here. So before anyone's eyes widen, it says on here up to 140 units. The application is for 120. I did change it, but for some reason that hasn't copied across when I sent it to Jane.
Okay.
So the application is for up to 120 units.
Thank you. Over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Simon Schofield from Marengo Communications. I'm Andrew Penner from David Wilson Homes. I look after any planning proposals where there isn't a current planning permission. So this is one of my sites. As Simon says, this is an outline application submitted recently and validated recently by Somerset Council for up to 120 dwellings. You're all familiar where the site is, to the south of the earlier phases, with Birchill Lane on the southern side. As we all know, again, it's part of the sort of, I always call it the sort of wedge-shaped area of land that was identified as part of the sort of future development area in the old Mendip local plan. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit about our vision and what we're up to. We are delivering new homes, as you'll be aware. David Wilson Homes Barratt Redrow is the parent company. We're committed to zero carbon in all our new homes by 2030. Where we are precisely with this development going forward, we could well be close to that, given that by the time we've got a planning permission, then the reserve mass is approved. So again, the sustainability and how close we get to zero carbon will be a product of when we build. We try to provide a place that supports the local community. We do that by provision of things like allotments and things on site. We like to think that our developments respond well to local character. We think this proposal is 100% deliverable. And critically on here, as we'll go on to say, we've now got biodiversity net gain, which wasn't a part of the earlier phase of the development. We're now legally required to meet at least 10% biodiversity net gain. And I'll provide a bit more detail on that in a moment. So, I suppose I could read this all out, but just to summarise. So, lower carbon, energy efficient homes, up to 120 new homes, range of different sizes, policy compliant affordable housing, mix of shared ownership and rent, will be guided on that by Somerset Council. 2 hectares of green space. That's really quite substantial, as we say there, about half the size of Victoria Park. We've got significant areas of play space, potential allotments, although I note that the allotments on the southern side of the road, immediately adjoining the site, so we don't necessarily need to provide allotments on this site. We could be talking about a contribution to enhance the existing allotments. We've got a lot of bats. This is a really bat highway here, up and down the mount, but also along Birchill Lane. As local residents want lots of bats there, so we have to provide lots of bat habitat. Keeping the existing rights away, and as it says down the bottom there, not just 10%, some 23% in terms of biodiversity net gain, and 68% improvement in terms of hedgerow units. So we think we're responding very well to the network of ecology, and in particular the bats on the site. So that's the very simple schematic master plan. Substantial areas of open space fringing the site, in particular along the southern, what I would call along the Birchill Lane boundary. A main point of access off the mount, simple T-junction arrangement with a road that provides a link through the site. It potentially allows for a connection across into the field beyond the field to the northwest. Thank you very much. That field there is part of Selwood's long-term plans, we believe, and obviously Selwood are also, of course, on the other side of the road. So we have allowed for a potential vehicular or certainly potential cycle or pedestrian connectivity across. We've shown substantial balancing ponds there at the southern part of the site, and we've also heard a lot of discussion about those, but those are sized appropriately to allow for the scale of development being brought forward. We've got play areas with the existing buildings retained in the corner, and substantial areas of planting. It's fairly straightforward in terms of the way it's planned. Once you've added the constraints, which are to try and retain the hedgerows, plus the balancing ponds naturally are at the lowest part of the site, and then the simple T-junction access in, the block pattern kind of sets itself out there. So fairly straightforward stuff. I say up to 120 new homes. So these are some of the discussion points I've already talked about. Ecology, big one for us. It's really important to us that we meet our ecology obligations on site. Many developers are looking to buy credits now for biodiversity or even hedgerow credits off site. We don't think that's appropriate. We always try to accommodate our ecological mitigation on site. We are one of the market leaders in terms of sustainability of our developments. We are on the journey to zero carbon. We have got an active strategy towards delivering zero carbon new homes. I'm not going to promise that this is zero carbon simply because it's a product of when we actually build the houses and when the consent gets issued and when the reserve matters gets approved. But I believe we're ahead of the game compared to many of our competitors. In terms of connectivity, again, the site's very well located, lots of public rights of way. We have talked historically about the option to bring the local bus service down the road. Once there's a critical mass of residents, it could potentially turn into this phase of the development, have a turning space and then go back up to the town centre, which might be a cost-effective way of extending some of the local bus transport. And we'd certainly be very happy to look at that. Utilities, we have also mentioned to several local residents who came along to our public consultation. We will be providing high-speed broadband. We will be providing connections into sewers and that sort of thing. So I know a number of the properties in that area are on their septic tanks. So there are opportunities to provide connections for existing residents or to leave those existing facilities in place. And finally, there you go, we've reached the end.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll take comments and questions from the public first. Helen, if you don't mind, we'll do the public first, if that's okay. And then we'll take comments and questions from us. So, anyone got any questions? Why don't you keep that one?
So one of my questions, I'm afraid I'm going back to drainage again, and not to an issue that I've already raised, but you're digging up Birchill Lane to put a new splay in going down to the river again. And I notice on the map that you're digging up right across the entrance to Selwood House, which would mean they had no access to their property. I wondered what your response to that was.
It will need to be managed during the construction phase, is the short answer. I think they are aware of our proposals. The access, it needs to be located there because of visibility displays, but also, having had some discussions with Somerset Highways, that was the optimal position in terms of potentially allowing that connectivity east-west. And that was one of the few places you can achieve that through the Selwood proposal on the other side. If you have it further up and down the road, there's less of an opportunity for that direct connectivity. So there was, some considerable time taken in terms of that location, but clearly how we manage the connection and the detail of how we construct it with regards to existing properties will need to be carefully managed.
So they weren't aware when I spoke to them last week, the residents of the property. I took a map and informed them of that. I'm also curious that your lower attenuation pond, the level of the outflow that you have is below where the water is going to be then turned to go downhill. So there's no mention of a pump in your plans. Are you pumping it uphill or what?
I believe there will be an element of pumping to make the system work, yes.
Okay, but that's not actually in your report at the moment.
I think if you read the flood risk assessment, there is reference to how the system will work. If it's not, I can certainly provide those details for you. Very happy to do that.
The only pumps mentioned are around foul sewers in that report.
We'll very happily provide some detail from our flood engineers for you on that to make sure you're reassured on that.
And my final question is, when you look at the map that you provide, you are putting a connection in from the existing attenuation ponds to the pond below, the second attenuation pond. And I wondered why that was needed.
Sorry, I'll have to explain what you mean by that.
So your existing attenuation ponds, there's a line on your maps that come down to the bigger attenuation pond. If you could point to that, where there's a number 2 in it. This one there. So why are you connecting the existing attenuation ponds into that pond, and you're saying you're going to be allowing an overflow into that?
Sorry, I'm still confused by what you mean by lines and connections.
I'm not really sure. Yeah, so there's a line coming down from the attenuation pond 1.
I'm taller than you.
Yeah, there's a line it comes down here, and then it shows in your drainage map that you're taking water and putting it into this pond.
That's not, that arrow coming south is not.
It's not that arrow, it's on your drainage maps.
Look, if you want to put that in writing, I'd be really happy to respond to that. I'm slightly confused
no, I'm
by.
not accusing you, but I'm just saying.
No, I say
You're taking water from one and putting it into another on your maps. And I'm concerned that that will put that pond at risk of overflowing again. And where that water goes, if it overflows, is it goes down between Birchhill Cottage and My Way, because that's the low point on the road. So I'm really concerned about your drainage proposals. And
As I say, if you would like to, contact me, I will get our flood engineers to talk to you in detail. I think that's by far the best way because they are the experts. I say it's not desperately clear to me from the plan precisely what you're suggesting, but.
Thank you, Sue. Any other questions from people here? Yeah, please.
Sorry. What about lighting for that? Is it going to be,
We have to keep a very low light environment because of the bats. So there will be a particular lighting strategy that requires most of that southern corridor in particular to remain unlit. And also the same way as the northern corridor, which is between the existing balancing ponds along there, that's a dark corridor as well. So existing flight paths for bats, they have to be kept dark. So there will be obviously street lights within the site, but on the edges of the development all around, it'll be lower level in terms of the lux lighting values, but also lower level, quite literally, in terms of lower mounted lights, which have less direct impact on bats. But we've got a very well developed lighting strategy which seeks to respond to the bats on the site.
Thanks. If nothing else, Helen, you got. There's a microphone, I'm sure.
Thanks. I think I met you when you did the consultation in the Bennett Centre. Yeah, hello. And I raised this point then. It's not a planning consideration, but I just think it would be a nice thing to do, is that a lot of people move here because they like the easy access to the countryside. They walk out their house, they've only got to go around the corner and they'll see the hills beyond, and then they can take their dog for a walk or go for a run or whatever. And I said in particular that it would be great if you just kept a bit of a view here and there for people that already live here. So where you've got the blocks in white there, the smallest block is just above an existing house. And I know that house will be in the way, but there's a footpath, that orange footpath that runs alongside it. It would just be great. Above that, you've got your attenuation ponds, and then you've got the hedge of the existing site that you're building out now. And there's quite a big space on either side of that hedge that you've left, which I talked to Cecilia about, and I was pleased that you did that. But it would just be great if that view could be continued all the way down. So you've just got that little block of housing there, and I just wonder if it would be possible to take it out, and it means that it might be 110 houses rather than 120, and I know that you want to put as many on as possible, but it just would help with having that sense of space, and then people can see through, all the way through as they're coming down the path, and they can see the hills beyond as they're walking to the allotment or walking down to the river or whatever. It's just amenity for existing residents, that's all. So it's just my feedback on that. It's something I've already raised. It should already be, and I'll raise it again. And I know it's not a planning consideration, but...
No, it is a planning consideration. As you'll see, there are the two blue arrows, are they blue, which show the viewpoint corridors that we'd identified when we did the visual assessment. Those two are shown through there, which is, that's why those sort of central spaces, so that you've got them coming out of the development. There we go. So there's one through there. So those are the high viewpoints that we picked out. We hadn't necessarily identified the one you're talking about. Very happy to.
What you're doing is you're identifying a viewpoint as you emerge past that little block of housing.
Okay, so
but actually,
I think it's from the high. What we're trying to identify is from the higher
yeah, I'm
points.
saying you could have a view, and the people that are going to live in the houses that you're currently building out, they could also have a view if you just took that little block out.
I'm very happy to have a look at it. Yeah. It's only a relatively minor adjustment to the master plan. As you say, it will have very minimal impact on the development numbers. Candidly, although it's up to 120, the reality was it'd probably be less than that. We always apply a bit of tolerance in the numbers but the reality is that when we come to put our house types on there, it'll probably come down to closer to 100, I suspect.
I've also got just a quick question about access. There's been quite a lot of questions about access on the B3092. And on the site that you're building out now, as far as I understood, at some point, sadly, the hedgerow will come out, and your hedgerow is going to move slightly to the east or to the right on this map. And that's in order for visibility displays and all the rest of it. And also that whole road is going to be 30 miles an hour, I believe, all the way down to the river or even to the bypass. So my main concern here is, again, it's the same kind of thing. The access road is on, it's a slightly straighter bit, but there's a bend as you go around. You're coming the other way. If you're going downhill, it'll be on the bend. As you go down the hill, you go round a bend, and then suddenly there'll be an access road on your left-hand side. I'm just a bit concerned now about all these different access roads coming off the B3092 and about managing that. I know this is a question for highways, really. We thought there were going to be some further up. We thought there were going to be some, what do you call those little sleeping? Not humps, but the places to cross. You know.
These tables?
Sorry, I can't remember the name. Bollards with yellow tops, you know, with lights on them, to sort of to indicate places to cross, but also to make the traffic sort of. The road was going to be wider, frankly, by taking out the hedgerow on the right-hand side, and I don't know if you're also going to do something like that. I obviously don't want to see any hedgerow taken out. I'm a Green councillor, for goodness sake. But, you know, safety, we've got to think about safety as well. So, and then that biodiversity net gain, would you then plant a hedgerow somewhere else instead, you know?
Well, I mean, first of all, the position of the access has been subject to discussion with Somerset Highways. It has been the subject of a preliminary safety audit, a stage 1. In terms of hedgerow loss, there will be some inevitably when you're constructing the visibility displays. Any lost hedgerow has to be replaced by significantly more than that. So, you know, the access point has been carefully chosen. Some of our initial plans had it further up the road. It's been moved slightly further south, partly because of visibility, but mainly to encourage that east-west potential movement in the future of pedestrians and cyclists through Selwood and across and through to Wallbridge eventually, if Selwood's long-term plans were to go ahead.
Andrew, do you know if Highways actually visited the site, or they just looked at their map?
I can't tell you for a fact whether they have visited the site. I can say that we undertook a fairly extensive pre-application. We received some detailed comments back. That does tend to suggest, you know, certainly a familiarity with the local road network. I can't swear to whether a particular engineer visited. I can say, as I say, there was a lot of dialogue about the positioning of that access, and as I say, that change that was made to look at potential long-term connections.
Can I just add, because obviously I come in and out of Birchall Lane quite a lot to get to the allotments, and particularly in the summer when the hedgerows are sort of in full flush, it's a difficult thing to come out, and, you know, I'm always turning right to go back into town, and it is difficult in terms of visibility. You sort of have to edge out, and at the moment that road is fairly quiet. It will obviously be becoming less quiet as time goes on. So, I mean, I'm quite concerned about that and how that's going to work, because the visibility, because of the hedgerows in particular, like you have to kind of edge out and then stop and then look, and yeah.
I mean, it was one thing we did talk to Highways about was the idea of potentially stopping that access and routing Birchall Lane through the development and coming out through the new access. Now, that wasn't something that Highways necessarily wanted to consider. I've always thought, because, as you say, that existing point of access where you come out, it is narrow, it is constrained, the visibility isn't great. We can't do anything about that. But one suggestion that was made as part of the early discussions was, could you stop that and then go in through the new development and then through the development and join the lane further in. So you close that slightly unsatisfactory access point. That wasn't something that Highways necessarily wanted to get into a discussion about. If it is something you wanted to, raise in, consultation comments, be happy to, potentially have a look at that again.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
I think the position of that road, a new exit that's being proposed, will be worse than at Birchall Lane, because you're further away, you've got less sight line. So I think it's about that position being worse than Birchall Lane. Birchall Lane isn't very nice pulling out of. If you're coming down and needing to turn near Cleves Lane, it's horrible. Okay,
thanks. Councillors, over to you.
it's slightly related because what you said there is something that I think, this is your third sort of smallish development within the same area. So I think the other two are sort of a similar size, aren't they? They're sort of all around 100. So we're talking about sort of 300 homes or so. And our sort of fear, I guess you could say, as a council, is piecemeal development, is development like this, because it's done in small sort of stages, sort of 100 or so homes at a time. And in terms of, there's a couple of things that I think that really affects. It's what we're sort of talking about, and actually your thing of, it's the connectivity of all of these different developments and how they all sort of fit together, and in terms of car access, but also in terms of, active travel, which we're incredibly keen on, and also in terms of Section 106 contributions as well. So the my question to you is, what are you planning in terms of Section 106 contributions? I haven't sort of seen anything, I may have missed it, but what are your proposals? Because this is the third development within an area, and I will be expecting them sort of to increase, your contributions increasing, and what you're able to offer us increasing, because it's becoming piecemeal development. So what are you planning in terms of Section 106?
Each development of 100 homes is necessary as piecemeal, but in terms of a Section 106, there will be one. Of course, the main offer will be 30% policy compliant affordable housing.
That's policy compliant though, so that's you just doing what you need to do. That's not extra.
Well, I'm not sure what I can say to you beyond we will be paying whatever Section 106 costs and heads are raised and obligations are asked of us by Somerset Council. That may include education. It will certainly be in contributions to open space. It'll probably include contributions towards some of the biodiversity side of things. But I can't at the moment tell you precisely what the ask is from Somerset. But again, if you have particular issues or requests that you want to make for additional Section 106 heads, or particular issues or particular things you're looking to see funded or contributions towards, very happy to look at those.
We have a couple already, actually, that we spoke about. I think winding back sort of, 5 or 6 years when the original FR3A sites came up, is one thing that Helen and us here were really, really keen on, was this whole concept of a master plan. And it took forever and a day to get a master plan out of David Wilson Homes and Wayne Homes. And if all of these had come forward together as a 400 house development, then the infrastructure and the Section 106 and the improvements would have been much greater than the individual parts in terms of just amenities on site. At the moment, it's just a few playgrounds and active travel links and stuff like that. Now, if a 400 home development would have come through, we'd have wanted community hubs, we'd have wanted, shopping facilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I agree with what Fiona's saying is we have a chance to right that wrong, I think. And from my perspective, with David Wilson Homes, yes, we are going to be asking for some Section 106, and we'll be asking you directly to put them in, because we found it's much easier for us to talk to the developer than going through Somerset. So we do have some things that we may touch on a bit later once other councils have had their views as well. But yeah, as I say, I think it goes back to this whole master planning thing that we were desperate for 5 or 6 years ago. So.
Yeah, I'm concerned about access to the 3092 as well. They've got all these cars, and everybody will have a car tipping out on the 3092. And you've already explained that lighting at night will be very, very dim because of the bats. So it's going to be a very dim, busy road after dusk. I am so you're going to have. I know you've, Sue, seemed to put a lot of work into looking at the drainage plan and the flood plan, and I appreciate that. Thank you. So, in words of one syllable, the houses will be served by Wessex Water being pumped across town, the foul water, the sewage, to the processing plant at Welsh Mill. Is that correct? But any runoff, once it's filled up the attenuation ponds, will go into a pipe and then thrown into the River Frome down the hill. Is that correct?
That would be the correct, yes. So it would be the discharge rate, though, is the all-important thing. So the rate at which it discharges is the critical thing.
Yeah, so this is something we've had to deal with here.
It's not just an empty pipe that simply flows out. The way, the mitigation of the flow and the quantum of the flow and how it's managed, that discharge rate, it's got to be basically better than current greenfield runoff rates.
And we've already heard that perhaps the pipe might be in the wrong place, might be too high or too low for it to actually be effective and coming back. You've made a big point about providing open spaces, green spaces. Of course, this always makes me laugh because it's already a green space, isn't it? So you're just moving things around a bit. But if you do give the town generously a open space the size or half the size of Victoria Park, who will manage that?
As with all the developments, we'd always offer it to the town council or any other local community organisation. If those organisations wish to take it forward in terms of its future management, we'd need to talk about adoption and the cost of doing that.
My
The second,
my role on the council, if you want to call it a cabinet position, is for open spaces. So I and the environment manager manage a team of rangers who are flat out at the moment. This is probably the third or fourth development we've seen in the last 6 months. We're saying we're going to very generously give you more open spaces. Yes, that's very kind, but we don't really see much money coming towards us. We're going to have to employ more people, more kit, and more time from our people to manage these spaces. So before we would accept any land like that, I think we would expect some sort of quid pro quo from yourselves.
Well, I say, if the town council wants to look at managing the space going forward, that would normally come with a commuted sum to look after maintenance for a period of time. Now, that's a detail that's usually put in our Section 106 agreements. If the town council didn't want to take forward the management, there would be a management company set up on site, as is fairly standard stuff.
With the affordable housing, which we will need, and 30% is what we normally see on sites, especially quite a tricky one, it's a very steep site like this. You'll say, yes, we'll give you 30%. You get your permission, and then you'll say, well, it's actually a bit hard. We can't quite give you all that stuff. Have you done any sort of research into if we're going to achieve this or not yet?
We always carry out detailed viability testing. I would not be allowed to put in a planning application unless we knew it worked. When I say we know it works, we know it works for our trading rules, but we also know it works in terms of development viability. And if we were asked to demonstrate that by Somerset Council, we'd be very happy to do so. We are, as I say, proposing to deliver. I think the current mix is something like 80% rent, 20% shared ownership is what the council have asked us for on this one. That's pretty typical stuff. Something we're very familiar with. We've certainly not resorted to a viability-based argument on other phases. Our commitment is to deliver that policy-compliant affordable.
Can I come in on the sustainability of the homes? Because like Mark is lead councillor for open spaces, I'm lead councillor for climate, so sort of passion area. You said sort of you're aiming for all developments to be net zero by 2030, and that it may or may not depend on the timelines. Why can you not just commit now that this will be a net zero development? Because, I mean, again, it's, my view is that I understand that there's government regulations and everything, but in my view, none of them, they go far enough. We have a climate emergency, and we just need this going in on we need all developments, well, actually from 20 years ago, but let's not go back that far, should be net zero. So can you commit that we're talking solar panels on all homes, no gas on site as a bare minimum?
Certainly say it will be a no gas development. I'm sure the councillor here has been in many detailed discussions with my colleague Cecilia about our delivery on earlier phases, and I'm sure you'll be, how should I put this, holding our feet to the fire again on this one. We are well ahead of future home standards as a company. I can't commit to zero carbon. That simply, I can't do that, and without taking further advice. It will be a product to where we are. All I can say is we are ahead of the game in terms of sustainability. I hope my councillor here would agree, and that we have done a lot of work together to deliver, over and above, building regs over and above future home standards, and we've worked closely on some of the detailed design features.
Thank you.
I only wanted to say that that's the best thing about this, I think, is that David Wilson Homes have got that commitment. And I don't know if you're going to discuss later in the agenda that there's been some reduction on some of the roofs of the wattage, but that's because of the size of the roofs. It's not because of a lack of commitment. So I think that's a good thing. The only thing that slightly concerns me is that there was a variation on the site that you are now, with the social homes. I don't know if it's to do with you or if it's to do with the social housing provider, but instead of the rent being set as it normally would be set, there was a variation that came in to say that it was going to be what's called affordable rent. rent. So social rent is what Astor, Stonewater, various other social housing providers would set as a normal rent. But affordable rent is taking into account actual private sector, rented sector, and you've done something where you've set it somewhere in between the two. So it means that it's kind of the richer end of the social housing people that are taking those homes. And I just wondered if, and there was that, you argued that on the basis of viability, I believe, because I spoke to the officer about it. And she said it was because you had said that it wasn't viable to do it at social rent. It might not have been you, it might have been, as I say, the social housing provider. And I wondered if it was to do with the fact that the housing is more expensive for you to build if you put all these solar panels on and all these other things. Has that got anything to do with you, that variation?
It shouldn't be. What usually happens is there's a cascade mechanism. So it starts off with we basically put the site out to various housing associations. You mentioned several there. They bid for bringing the site forward for the tenure mix that we've agreed with the council. What they then normally do is sign up detailed nomination rights, as they're called, with the council. So not only who gets them off which waiting list, but they also set as a priority that they'll first offer them at social rent. If they can't get them away at social rent, it'll be, so there's a cascade mechanism. It's all, I think, that's negotiation in detail between the housing association and the housing team at Somerset Council.
Okay, so it's not to do with your viability, it's to do with the social housing provider.
That's what it normally is
Okay,
about.
Sorry,
yeah.
thank you, and I'm sorry for that.
Okay. Thanks, Sharon. I'm going to hand over to Jane in a minute to wrap up, where we all are on this one. She likes that bit. The two things that I picked up on from Section 106 perspective is there is a community building called the Key Centre, which is just, I think it's all north of your various developments, north of Dragonfly Close, which we have just taken over, and I think we can have a discussion about that, about how you guys can assist there. And the other thing, which is close to our hearts, is our LC WIP program, and how that can how that can be either extended or you can feed into that as well. So we can have further discussions about that.
Yeah, very happy to look at that. I mean, clearly, you will be aware that if you can hook them on some sort of policy in the adopted town plan or in the adopted market plan, we can, it's a fairly easy thing for us to get into a detailed discussion on those things.
Okay.
Can I also just add on to that list? I'm going to take the opportunity, water connection to Muir Jones allotments. Completely shameless.
Well, I think how we interact with those allotments is important. At one point, we were showing potential allotments on site, but I think it makes so much more sense for us to,
Well, she did declare an interest, I suppose.
Steve, just one short thing. For the site above, one of the things I asked for, and you very kindly did, was that you did an east-west, north-east, south-west route, as you have here, looking at potential connection, not just necessarily to the next field being developed, but because you've got the cycle route, number 24 cycle route there. So that would be where I would see where I wonder if either that road or the one in the development above could actually be connected to the cycle route.
To go away and look at as to how it all works, yeah.
I think whether
the water connection, I think
very much so.
there's a few angles there. I think we can.
And I think we'll be guided by Somerset Council on whether we need to provide that connection going across to the Selwood land, whether it's vehicular or cycle or pedestrian only. But other connections, always happy to look at those. It makes for our residents, love to be able to get around. And the quickest routes are the ones that people will find naturally.
Great, thank you. Jane, are you? Jane's on her own tonight. Owen unfortunately is not with us tonight, so Jane is doing a lot.
Thank you. So I think somebody asked a question about the tenure split on the affordable housing, and I noticed that the housing team have actually come back and stated that they wanted to see 28 social rent and 8 shared ownership out of the, whatever that adds up to. Thank you, 36 affordable housing. It's been a long day. Okay, so I think I did hand you the comments of the Civic Society just then, and I think sort of in line with the Civic Society, I think we'd like to go away and just spend a bit more time looking at more detail in it. And I think the Civic Society, and actually I'm sure it would like this to go before the Planning Committee at Somerset, and I think we would like that opportunity too, but I'm sure it will anyway. So I think now I've got to read my own writing. Sort of the things that we have picked up, Helen's comments about trying to build in more of a gap so that some of the views are maintained. Links to the existing cycle routes. Was some concern about the access, so I think we would like to look in more detail about what Highways comments are, and whether or not perhaps there needs to be some traffic calming measures considered to, I know that it'll be reduced down to 30 miles an hour, but actually that might require some traffic calming, but again, we'll look at that in more detail. I think we'd be keen to see this included with a bus route, as you suggested. That may be possible when there's the critical mass of people there. Fiona's shameless water connection to the allotments. And to be discussed, and what else? I think if we could look at some wording of a condition about the connections of the drainage whilst that work is going on, and obviously before any when the connection is made, at what point during the development. And perhaps maybe something a little bit tighter around site management. I know how difficult it is, to, I really do, but as I say, I want to give the residents a rest if we can. And we talked about Section 106, and we have got some ideas about how Section 106 could be provided for the Quay Centre. Look at the possibility of implementing some of the links or proposals that are in the LC whip for the Keyford area, which I think might actually include traffic calming, and to ensure that the existing public right-of-way through the site, which hands up, I haven't walked for a long time, that's adequately maintained so that that connection to the Quay Centre is suitable for pedestrians and cyclists. And there was one more that I've forgotten. Veteran trees, etc. on the site. I know it doesn't propose that they'll be felled, but just to highlight that, really want to make sure that nothing happens to those trees.
Thank you very much. We have worked closely with the Town Council and local councillors on earlier phases. That has been, I hope, a productive relationship. This is an outline proposal. That is an indicative plan. Some of the suggestions I've heard here tonight have been very sensible ones. Really happy to go away and look at those. And yeah, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and talk to you.
Maybe we can just collate with residents and then get back to you with sort of further their comments and some of our comments as well, and then we can have another meeting. And
yeah, very happy to do that.
From there.
Can I
It's certainly not a fixed plan.
Can I say one more thing and just say that I think what we've heard tonight is I think trust between you as a developer and between sort of local residents has really been damaged recently because of the sort of the issues around flooding and the other issues that Elaine mentioned. And I think that, to me, there's sort of, I think we also need to see that you're doing, and this is sort of, not related to the planning necessarily, but I'd really like to see you sort of proactively trying to rebuild that trust. And, Jane mentioned that the variation on the other side of the road would maybe need to come from you. So I think if we can see that you're really proactively taking on board what you've heard tonight and trying to tackle it, I think that will also go a certain way towards rebuilding trust between, David Wilson Homes and the residents, which I think is really important, particularly if this application does sort of, go forward.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And finally, from me, and my apologies, my hacking and spitting, which is not something you need to put up with.
Right, so we're not going to do any decision on this one tonight, are we?
I don't think so. I
No.
think, as I said, we'd like to take the opportunity to consider, what,
Yeah.
what we've heard from everybody, including residents. Maybe look at some of those issues in a bit more detail in relation to the application, and then we'll formulate our formal response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Yeah. That'd be excellent. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. All right, thanks, everyone. We'll take a couple of minutes break. You don't all have to stay for the rest of the meeting. Obviously, if you want to, you're more than welcome. But if not, thank you very much for turning up. Not tonight, but at a future, we're going to collate everything that we know so far, and then we'll probably have another meeting. We'll all be in the open. We're not going to do it behind closed doors. We want to collate what we've done so far, bring in all various other bits and pieces, make sure we know what we want in terms of Section 106, connections to allotment sites, etc., etc., and then we'll have another meeting. Okay? Right. Can we recon? Oh, we've lost Polly. Careless of us. You driving to France tomorrow? Are you driving to France? Which pub are you going to now these days? Well, the Crown's closed, isn't it? Up for sale, yeah. Closed today? I don't know, I just saw it was closing, or it's up for sale. Really, again? I saw that today. Corner House is up for sale? I think the Corner House.
SM4.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. No club to chance. We'll have to go to the Blue Ball before too long. Sorry? You have to go to the Blue Ball before too long.
I don't know. Just check the maps.
Well, no, what is that? Where's that? Courtly. Oakfield. In the garden. Right, Jane, next.
Thank you. So the next application that we're going to discuss is number 723 on our list. And this is 8 Berkeley Road, and it's for the demolition of an existing garage and the erection of a single-storey pitched roof garden building. So you can see the site location plan here. And then on the proposed plan, they have indicated the area of the proposed garden room. Here you can see the elevations. I have something on my screen in the way. Here we go. So this is the proposed garden room here. These are the double doors, which you can see here. The reason that we have raised this one for discussion is it does mention in the design and access statement that it will be used by people or relatives visiting, but it is self-contained. So I think the Civic Society raised some concern about its potentially being used as an Airbnb. Whether that's the case or not, we're just recommending or suggesting that there should be a condition added so that it cannot be sold or let separately. And I think the Civic Society also had some concerns about the roof ridge being unnecessarily high, and that they feel it could be reduced to mitigate the impacts on the neighbouring property. Over to you.
Great. Anyone? Any thoughts? Anybody? No thoughts. I mean, I think the condition that it's not sublet and all that, I think it's very valid. The neighbours haven't complained. It does look as if the roof is quite high, doesn't it? I'm not sure if there's, it's difficult to tell because it's at the back, if there's any overlooking or it's going to affect them, but I mean, that's one for the
Windows look like the Velux in the roof, so I'm not sure that would overlook onto the neighbour, would it?
I don't think it's overlooking, is it? It's the fact that it's just going to be quite imposing in their garden, isn't it? When they look out from their back down their own garden, you're going to have this big structure off to the right as they go.
I mean, that is something that we could ask the planning officer to assess during their visit, perhaps.
Yeah, and that and the condition of, you know, as the Civic Society said, I think that's where I am on that one. I don't know where anyone else is. Does that all make sense to everybody? Right. I'll propose whatever.
Thank you, Steve. Seconded by Fiona, and that's unanimous.
Thank you.
The next one on the list for discussion is number 725. This is the Beaches at West End, and it's for the replacement of timber windows with PVC alternative. Obviously raised this one because of the PVC windows. I thought I should point out that this is actually described as sheltered accommodation, and the intention of the work is to maintain the external character of the building while significantly enhancing its thermal efficiency and reducing the need for maintenance requirements, future cost, and improving internal comfort for residents. I can't remember what just bear with me, what the Civic Society said on this one. Sure. That yes, that because that they've got no objection in principle, but because it's in the conservation area, they feel that a higher quality material such as powder coated aluminium would be preferred. They feel that plastic would not only look out of character, but will degrade over time and fail to maintain its original appearance. So So yeah, that was the reason for raising that one, really, just to see whether or not you did have any objection to the PVC.
I really appreciate the intention, and I don't have any objection to the PVC if that's what they think will work the best. I think it's more important that buildings are thermally insulated and effective, and the reduction of maintenance requirements than how it will look. But that's my personal opinion.
I totally agree. The only thing is if it would make it prohibitive cost-wise, like if it, if to go to better quality windows would mean it couldn't be done, then obviously that's not great, because the main driver is to obviously be better for the residents.
I think aluminium is significantly more expensive than the PVC.
I'm saying if it prohibits the whole upgrade, then there's no point in putting that forward.
Yeah, I'm happy with PVC. Cheaper.
Yeah, I'd be happy with it and echo what's just been said, but I would be concerned if there was a dramatic change in colour, and you're talking about a degradation. If it is white, it will degrade, but PVC is available in lots of different colours now, so as long as it's in keeping, I don't see any real problem with it.
I believe the intention was to so that it matches the colour that it currently is. Yeah.
So we're okay with that? No objection? Yeah.
Objection, yeah.
Someone proposed. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Philip.
Okay, that's unanimous. So that was proposed by Steve, seconded by Fiona, and unanimous. Thank you. Next on the list is number 726. So this is land at the retreat. You'll all be familiar with the site. So permission was granted for the erection of, so the demolition of the existing workshops that were there, and then the erection of some studio workshops, and then the 4 dwellings that you see here. This application is to vary condition 2. There's lots of variations proposed to various conditions. I won't go through them in detail, but essentially it slightly adjusts the position of the dwellings within the application site. So you can see here the studios have been brought forward slightly so that there is more amenity area behind the studios. So you can just like pay and spot the difference. And the houses have been moved slightly further back within the plots as well. It isn't significant, and it I'm sure it makes it, obviously it will make a difference to the applicants in the way that the plots are built and brought forward, but it's not going to make a huge visual difference. And just for reference, the Civic Society said they've got no objection in principle, provided that this is not prejudicial to the dispute over the Riverside footpath, which is currently with Somerset Council. The creation of enhanced rear amenity space to the studios is unnecessary for their intended employment use, and we fear future attempts to seek change of use to residential if the units are not let. I can't see how this will have any impact on the footpath application that's with Somerset, and obviously you will have your own views about whether or not
or the permitted footpath across the top there.
It won't make any difference to that. No.
Helen, did you have? Oh, sorry, you've got no mic. I've stolen it.
Yeah, that was my concern as well. So it looks as if on the first one, which I assume is the one on the left, that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees, which, and then there's a green wedge alongside, I can't remember, I know that lady's name, who has got that house there. And the whole lot's going to move north, and so we lose a load of trees and a bit of a green strip, which was a sort of maybe a bit of a buffer. And I thought that was where the permitted path was most likely to go if we were going to get a path, or that was what was offered. There were all kinds of issues, weren't there, about where a path might go, and I thought I saw a map that suggested that it was going to go along the top, and I'm just a bit concerned. Is that a private road? Or, you know, where it's going to go and whether or not she's happy with it. The fact that
I mean, the lady that lives.
yeah, that lives to the north, yeah.
Yeah, Dina.
Yes, and that she's happy with not having that sort of buffer of. I mean, she opens her garden on Open Gardens, you know, sort of like that. She's not going to have those trees now or any of that sort of green buffer along that wall. Is she okay with it?
I think so. The footpath is just very small on this plan, so you can. It's here.
It is still there.
It's still there, yeah. And that this green buffer, is that the bit that you mean is the same as it is on the existing plan?
Oh, okay. Well, there are some trees that have been removed, though. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why those trees have come out. I know that the path at that point, because the town council have purchased a bit of land below, and if you went down there now, you can walk along that path. I wouldn't say it's necessarily properly surfaced at the moment, but it will also enable the town council access with our sort of grounds vehicles so that we can get down to that piece of land. But the buffer is still there, as I understand it.
Okay, sorry, perhaps I've not read the map properly. Thank you.
Right, there are trees removed between the two. Like, unless we know why they're removing trees, I don't want to.
I think they're already gone.
Yeah,
I was there the other day, weren't we? I think they've gone.
I think they might be proposed trees rather than existing. Because there's not any trees there.
No.
When we walked the work.
I don't remember seeing any.
No.
Any other thoughts? I mean, it's very minor, isn't it, as far as I'm concerned? Yeah. No issues with anyone? No.
Is that no objection?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. Okay, so the next one on the list is where things start to get little complicated. So maybe we should move this one up. But this application number 731 on our list, and it's for land south of the Mount, and it's actually one of the sites, David Wilson Home sites, that we were talking about in reference to the drainage not so very long ago. This application is to vary condition 24, which relates to solar panels, and it doesn't make sense. Okay, yeah. So originally the commitment was that all houses will have solar panels on them, and that each solar panel would generate, sorry, it's not on here, that's my fault. I think it was 3 kilowatts of energy. This, each house, yeah. I think, as Helen alluded to earlier, now they have done the surveys and they've come to look at the solar installation, and they've realised that some of the roofs aren't big enough to take the solar panels that would generate that amount of energy. So by varying this condition, they have made reference to all of the plot numbers that will need to change, and instead of producing 3 kilowatts, it will be 2 kilowatts of solar energy on the plot numbers that you can see referred to on the screen. So 27 of the houses out of the original 118 all have solar panels with a lower input-output. So I think what I've said in the notes is, I mean, you know, it's great that all the houses will have solar on, and you know, really appreciate the sustainability measures, but there is still a slight loss there. So just, you know, how will that loss be compensated for? You know, is there any proposal to put something other alternative in? So yeah, over to you.
That's my question. I don't want to approve it or support it or not object to it until we know the answer to that. And what additional sustainability measures are they going to do in order to, compensate for that loss of carbon reduction?
It's a shame we couldn't have grabbed him at the time. Did you know the answer? I think you took Helen's idea that the roofs were too small, and therefore that was sort of the answer, as in there wasn't anything they could do, but it would have been really good to be able to ask him what was the mitigation.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it would be fair to point out that Andrew, who was here tonight presenting, wasn't actually the agent or driving the other two sites. That was Cecilia Hughes, who we were dealing with previously, so he may not have been able to answer the question.
Put this on the list of questions for the next stage.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to, isn't it? Yeah, I think we just need a lot more information, don't we, as to the why. You know, you can get solar panels of different outputs now as well. So, you know, yeah, I think we just need a bit more background to the whole thing.
And presumably, if you know, if they provide the technical details, which I'm sure they've got, and they'd be happy to provide, and you know, it's quite clear that the roofs aren't big enough to take solar panels that generate that. We're not necessarily looking for alternatives to only provide additional solar. There'll be other sustainability measures that would be appreciated. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll hold on that one for the time being.
On that one, yeah. So the next one that we're going to discuss is numbers. It's 2, so it's a household and list building. So that's numbers 732 and 733. And this is 17 Catherine Street, Frome. As I mentioned, it is a listed building, also in the conservation area. You can see the existing photograph that's been taken from the rear there. And I'm afraid after that, I got a little bit confused. Yes, yeah. So the first thing that appears to have happened, and I'm afraid it is very small on the screen, but I'm sure you've looked at it, the red line on the site location plan does not match the property that they have indicated that the extension will be on. It's on the property next door. So that was confusing to start with, and then I think there should be clearly existing and clearly proposed plans rather than superimposing the existing with the red line on the plan, because it's just not certainly wasn't clear to me what the proposal was. And I must admit, I looked at it very carefully because I really couldn't work it out. So I think we need to ask for some clearer drawings. And the Civic Society said more information needs to be provided. The development will extend beyond both of the neighbouring rear extensions, but there's no information about the side elevation that will be exposed. There's very little context indicated on the drawings, and the buildings on the left-hand side does not appear to be represented accurately because it doesn't correspond to the photos, which is a much better way of saying what I said. So I think we just, I mean, we can either object because the plans are not clear, or we can not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think we need just, can we get some proper plan? I mean, some decent plans that make it clear what they're trying to do and its relation to the buildings either side of it.
And you'll be pleased to know that unless anybody would like to raise any other applications for discussion, that's the last one on the list.
Then vote for the comments that Jane has made, and we'll send those through. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Philip.
And that's unanimous. Thank
Great.
you.
The next planning meeting is the 7th of August, according to this. 7th of August, 2005. But please note, 2005. Yeah, 2025. Yeah, probably going back to FR3A. Please note that the scheduled meeting on the 28th of August is now going to be on the 21st of August.
Noted.
Because Jane's on holiday. Again.
Just me.
And Owen's on holiday. Right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.